Welcome to Chat GPT 5 with Nick and Lee. Gentlemen, it's always a pleasure to have both of you on. And, this is our fifth installment of, well, I guess it's AI or machine learning. I guess I
Yeah,
shouldn't call
yeah.
it Chat GTP, but, welcome back. It's been a few months since we met last. So
And I
it'll
have
be
to stop you, Chris.
okay.
I'm rubbing off on you. You said chat GTP, not chat GPT.
I listened to our podcast today too, and I laughed when I heard you say that. So you've cursed me. You have officially cursed me here. And I did a couple more things that you do too, Lee. So you were talking about how only half of the content is accurate when you ask it questions. So I thought, what kind of questions do I know the answers to pretty quickly? So I asked it, what's the minimum pitch on a house that you can put on and actually shingle it in Illinois? And it came back with the right answer, which is 212, 12.2. I get them backwards, but it's right. So I was impressed with that. And then I asked it what, give me a price that it would cost to roof a house in Illinois, a net new, a build, 1,800 square foot house. And it came back with numbers that I thought were pretty accurate. And then I asked it, how about to re-roof a house? So tear off and put new shingles on. And it came back like 30% cheaper than to do a new one. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense to rip everything off and put it back on. It's cheaper. So
No,
so yeah, it's kind of cool because it's got some answers pretty quickly, but
no.
you really got to check them out. You really got to check them out.
Well, I mean, for our faithful listeners, I'm going to come across
Is it plural? Is there more than one?
Well, if all
as a
three of us
plus
listen, if all three of
as
us
a
listen,
I'm going to come across as they're going to say what happened to Lee. Look under his desk. Is there a pod? Because I've been using Copilot quite a bit, and the primary reason is because I hate writing DAX code for Power BI, and Copilot is great at writing DAX code. It works.
Yeah.
I can tell you that it's not very good at giving me PySpark code, but it gets me part of the way there. So I'm more bullish on at least Copilot and GitHub Copilot.
you're coming around.
Was
So
three
Nick,
months
now you
ago.
have to just have like a horrible experience or something. You got this program's just not going to work
No, no,
out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna dedicate that to Google Gemini this month.
Okay.
Google Gemini defines screwing the pooch. It was not a good rollout, and
early early on early on I played with some of
yeah,
the early competitors to chat gpt OpenAI's chat
yeah.
gpt and what was it before Gemini? There was a
Bard,
earlier
Bard.
Bard. Oh gosh, Bard was a travesty.
Yeah. Well,
um
I mean, I assume we all know what the issue is with Gemini. It basically produces non-accurate images of historic people, and then they tore it down. I mean, they basically said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to let
yeah.
you build out images. And I'm fine. My issue is this is a large, what, top 10 valued company on the planet, top 5 valued company on the planet. No one looked at this. No one tested this. No one said, hey, this is a bad idea. We're gonna look, we might actually lose a couple of $1 billion in valuation, which they did. I'm reminded of 30 plus years ago when I moved here to work at Kodak. And one of the big stories was, if you remember, the disc camera that had, that circular negatives.
Yeah.
And Kate Whitmore was the CEO at the time, and he had greenlit the project because they were giving them what they said were negatives off the prototype camera. They weren't. They were just negatives off a. It was basically Ektachrome negatives. but they cut in a circle. So, I mean, your QA is only as good as the truth of the developers giving it to QA.
Well, to another example of that, I just saw this hit. I think it was this week. Um, Amazon had some trial market where you could go in and you picked off of the shelves what you wanted and you just
Mm-hmm.
walked out. And
Yeah.
the concept supposedly was that cameras and presumably AI and machine learning were figuring out what you had, and as you walked out, image facial recognition. And so it was like, oh, Nick Santilli walked in, he
Mm-hmm.
grabbed, a bottle of water and a tuna sandwich, and, cha-ching, cha-ching, and deduct from your Amazon account. And it just came out that it was actually like 1,000 human beings monitoring every square inch of this place
Yeah.
and manually doing all this, right? So,
Yeah.
okay, there's a concept. Is there a hamster on the wheel behind the
Mm-hmm.
behind the curtain,
Yeah.
or is it really? I think we've talked about this on one of our previous, that it's just become a hashtag or a keyword, right? The clickbait. You put AI
AI
powered
powered.
in your product, and everybody's
Yeah.
going to be interested in it. So,
Oh, it was about 5 years ago. There's an Amazon. Well, there was an Amazon store in the mall in Bellevue, Washington. It had books. It had, um, I won't say the name because she'll start talking to us. Devices, and they didn't have any cash registers.
Yeah.
So you basically, I think that what you did was you just went and you typed in
Didn't you
your
have to scan
email.
in with something or use your
But
phone?
I think it was. I think that at the time there was like a terminal, and you typed in your email, and then you just walked out, and it scanned whatever you had, and it would charge you for it. I mean,
But
and I think that they wanted to do that for what's their grocery store, Whole Foods.
yeah.
yeah.
Um, I haven't. There's a Whole Foods that's on the other side of Rochester for me. I haven't been to it. I'll have to swing by at some point and see what they do there.
But it
I
wasn't,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so the whole Amazon piece, because there was a store like that in Chicago. I thought you had to scan and we never went into it, but it was all people watching it. It really wasn't
Yeah,
cameras.
it was revealed they're scrapping the store because clearly paying a,
A thousand
a
people to,
thousand humans to do what theoretically was being done by code and machines and everything else
But
is
I mean, but how did Amazon know what you looked like? That's what worries me.
yeah.
Um,
true.
you know, it's the other thing that's happened since our last get together was Sports Illustrated firing their staff because they discovered that most of their articles were AI generated.
I did hear
And
that.
then since because so we had this pushed out from a month or so ago. Since then, Sports Illustrated has actually been shuttered.
Yeah, crazy. An
One of
institution.
the great magazines of been around for 100 years and gone.
Yeah,
Because
that was surreal to read. I mean, I grew up on,
Yep.
the weekly issue, and
Yeah.
they were all over the coffee table and in the bathroom, and it's like there was always my dad coming in, read this article. You got to check out this Brian Bosworth, or whoever it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember the first episode I got was John Wooden was Sportsman of the Year. This would have been like in 74 or 75. It's really it's sad.
so
What?
were they trying to keep it? So all the I did read that all the writers got fired, but
Yeah.
it so the writers that were employed were using AI. It almost seems like they could have saved the company if they just would have used AI and got rid of all the writers to start. I mean, obviously
Well, I
there's a
mean, well,
financial problem there.
well, in a sense, but at what point do we completely give ourselves over to the machine overlords?
Lose the human touch.
I mean, when I'm a huge Dodgers fan. When I read about the Dodgers, I don't want to read what ChatGPT has to say
AI
about the
says.
Dodgers. I want somebody who actually is embedded with the team, one of the reporters that can fill me in.
Mhm.
I mean, the same thing with news. I mean, we're at a point now where the media, it has so little trust. AI isn't going to make that any better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And again, Nick, I think you talked last time we spoke. Your son was applying for jobs, and he'd run it through Chat GPT. And my son actually gave me something yesterday, and he gave me two versions of it. And I said, "Well, I really like this version. Have you tried running it through Chat GPT?" And he's like, "That's actually the version I ran through." So
Yeah.
I think again, to the point, it needs to be a tool. There has to be oversight on it. And to your piece, I can get 40% of the way there. Isn't that what your statistical number is? And then I got to take it the rest of the way myself.
Yeah, I was getting a friend and I headed out, did a little road warrior stuff yesterday, and for some meetings, and I was waiting for him to come pick me up, and I had like 5 minutes to wait, and fired up. ChatGPT has become a daily for me, and
Mhm.
Copilot, right? I work in both every single day, even on the weekends. It's whether it's work related or not. I'm in there doing something with it, and so it was one of those things. Okay, I've got 5 minutes. It was early. I didn't have email hitting my inbox yet, so it wasn't like some low hanging fruit to knock off. But I had some other tasks that needed some attention. Well, 5 minutes. You don't want to start something that you can't. You're going to lose your place, your train of thought. I fired up a couple prompts, got a couple things spitting out, and in the 5 minutes that I waited, I did what probably would have been an hour and a half or so worth of manual work previously.
Mhm.
And I was able to leave it there in that stateful, chat window. Pulled up in my driveway. I left it as is and jumped in the car. And then when I got home, in the afternoon, I picked right back up where I left off. And it was yet another kind of epiphany of, yeah, I can use 5 minutes very effectively now. Whereas
Mhm.
before it's like, let's play Scrabble on my phone for a couple minutes, or
Yeah.
like 5 minutes is going to be counterproductive, typically. But yeah, I got a lot done in a few minutes. So
And those are going to be the type of people and things that stand out are the ones that can utilize it like you did, and you utilize it in that quick time frame, not the ones. And you've probably seen it, on LinkedIn, is, hey, I can tell you as a salesperson how to make $1 million with AI. Quit using it and pick the phone up.
right,
Start making
right,
yeah,
phone calls.
yeah.
There's ways to use it to be successful, but there's also ways to just do something that consumes all your time and you get nothing done. You gotta figure out the difference.
and I think again, we're focusing a lot of this around Chat GPT. There's a lot of other tools, and I want to talk about some of the other tools in a moment. But um, what I find now is I'm really trying to expand, not just using it for the Chat GPT for the same things over and over, but what are other ways that I can leverage this?
Mhm.
What can I do, whether it's for fun or goofing around or whatever. And one night, I was kind of winding down for the night and scrolling on Instagram a little bit, and I came across this account that I immediately fell in love with. That was they periodically post hypothetical Seinfeld episode descriptions. And
Mhm.
I was laughing because they're like current, right? It's like Jerry gets a new iPhone and blah 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 blah, and Putty and Elaine, and anyway, they were hilarious. They're just they're like these
Mhm.
little online things. And I went down a rabbit hole of reading this, just laugh. And I'm like, oh man, I love Seinfeld. So then that got me thinking. I'm like, light bulb, open up Chat GPT, and I started prompting it, write me some, fictitious Seinfeld episodes. And it started churning them out. I'm like, I like to believe the person who runs this account is legitimately going, oh, this would be a funny episode, right? They're
Yeah.
an aspiring sitcom writer or something like that. But then I'm sitting here entertaining myself with a
The
generative
same
AI
thing.
spitting out, similar things. And so yeah, kind of interesting to see how else you can kind of challenge it to do different things for you. Yeah, you talking about your roof and your roof plan. I mean, it's not just creating well-crafted emails. I saw somebody saying use it as your personal assistant. Ask it, what to plan you a date night for you and your wife. Coming up on a Saturday night, and it'll be, what area do you live in? What kind of food do
Yeah.
you like? And it's like, okay, here's some things. Do you want me to book you a reservation? Yeah, and pretty so yeah, personal assistant and
It
so many
stopped
different
for
ways.
so for me though, I think you guys probably use much more technical piece than I do. It all stops at, was it 2022? It says I don't have data past 2022. So it can't get anything. The version I was using, that's what it kept saying. I can't get this because I only have data to 2022.
I think that's the free version. I
That,
think
yeah,
the
that's what I'm using.
paid version is more current.
It has
So
more. Oh, okay, then that would be more helpful because I'd be
yeah,
booking restaurants that closed during COVID.
yeah, yeah. So I had an opportunity since we last met. I was at a conference for Know Before, who does
Yeah.
security awareness training and all
Mhm.
that stuff. Great company, and they had a lot of really great sessions. And one of them was I can't remember who it was who led it. I should, but um, he did this whole session on how AI tools are impacting, and accelerating scams and whatnot.
Mhm.
But it was voice cloning, and it was, generating video. And now we've got Sora and some of these other, video generative AI tools. And it was a super fascinating, 45-minute session. And he started out with the voice cloning tools, and 11 Labs is one that's really cool. I went out and played with it, and I kid you not, I did this in a workshop that I put on for my job, where I was talking about phishing and scams and things like that. I went on to 11 Labs, spent $1. It was $1 for the first month
Hmm.
basic access. I spent $1. I put in my stuff. I recorded myself talking for 30 seconds. It created a voice model of my voice, and then I typed in some content that I wanted it to speak, and hit generate. I'm not even kidding. It was 5 minutes from the time I hit the website to signed up, put my credit card information, gave it my voice, and had it generate 5 minutes. And it was close enough. My wife's like, I know that's not you saying that, but holy cow, that's scary how close it is. And if you
Mhm.
don't know me, right,
Yeah,
or
then
if
it's
you
you.
only talked to me once, you probably wouldn't know. So that was what was possible in 5 minutes and in $1. Imagine, a year from now. Imagine taking an hour of training that and tuning the voice. So anyway, that came out of this conference or this session, and the presenter went on to say, okay, now I can take a digital avatar or a AI generated version of myself with a bunch of cameras scanning me, and okay, here's virtual Nick or Lee or Chris, and now I can take my voice clone. And hey, by the way, there's another tool out here that matches the lips of your digital avatar to the audio. So you can have a fully synthetic visual of you with, your mouth that is synced to audio that you never said. coming up and saying, pretending to be you.
We could do
Whether
this podcast every day and it wouldn't really even be us, would it?
we
Do you
could,
do you
eh,
know if that was, you said, it was 11 labs?
yeah.
Do they put some kind of a watermark on the recording that says it was generated by AI?
I don't recall, but I'd have to go back and look. I really don't
Well,
remember.
that hasn't been mandated yet, but that's I was listening to a guy named Orient Etzioni of True Media talk about Sora that you were
Yeah.
and just showing
Yeah,
those videos, and he said like the reputable, or not saying that they're not reputable, but like reputable organizations are doing that watermark to try to be that
yeah,
distinguisher so people know.
Well,
yeah,
last week I was at the Microsoft Fabric community conference. And Fabric is the new all-in-one data and AI analytics platform. And one of the things they talked about, they emphasized, was ethical AI. They are hiring people to make sure that nothing gets out that doesn't need to get out, and making sure that the AI tools don't produce anything that would be hateful, offensive, cause harm. They're doing all the they're trying to do all the right things. And again,
Microsoft
my
is.
biggest concern is we see a deep fake of the president
Yeah.
saying, "Okay, Putin, I've had enough. We're done with you. We're declaring war." Or somebody's having Putin saying, "I'm declaring war on Europe." I mean, this, I mean, that's how close we are to annihilating ourselves.
Well,
And
I was
AI that's doing it.
I was going to wait till our next episode or maybe the one after that because it'd be closer to the election, but I'm just going to pull the pin and just throw it out right now. So you think deep fakes are gonna influence the upcoming
Sure,
election?
of course they
There's get
probably already are.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
Hey, did we talked about last time the voice
yeah,
the voice deep fake that was supposedly Biden, robocalling and
yeah.
mhm.
telling a bunch of voters not to vote for, whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, we already saw that. Um, the hard thing to tell is, have we seen it a lot more that we just haven't caught it?
We don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Um,
that's the well. I think I brought this up on our last session. When do we know we've lost control?
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We
You
may have
did.
already lost control, just don't know it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to say that the experience I've had over the last 3 months with this stuff has been amazing. When I'm using GitHub Copilot, it's almost like it's reading my mind. But then I hear, like last week, somebody was talking about how the early versions of OpenAI, when they trained it in English. And then somebody put in a question in Spanish and it replied in Spanish. It learned another language on its own.
That's real. That's real.
That's 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 the stuff. I mean, I heard that and I'm like,
That's scary.
I mean,
Yeah.
everybody else was just sort of like, just staring. I mean, they almost like an NPC type thing. Like they were just like, okay, cool, that's cool. And I'm like, no, this is
That's
bad.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've been studying machine learning a lot over the last year, and I mean, I understand its concepts, and I understand that that's what it's supposed to do. But if there aren't any guardrails on it,
We've talked about guardrails in the past, and as I mentioned, I was on the road a bit yesterday with a friend, and we talked a lot about AI and all that. And guardrails, it's a nice term for bias. And unfortunately, in our world, there's a need for those guardrails or the bias, right? We don't want
Yeah.
it to be just wide open for
Mhm.
malicious intentions, right?
Yeah.
But even if we do that, somebody's deciding what's malicious and what's not, and putting coding that bias or programming in some manner
Mhm.
that bias to say, yeah, this is bad and this
Yeah.
is not bad. And again, where the governance of that, the oversight,
Yeah. Well,
at
I mean,
what point?
at
At
the
what point does
in a session last week, so when they actually were talking about how we're gonna, detect hate, and somebody with more guts than I have actually asked, how do you define that? Who's defining that?
yeah, that's where I was
And I mean,
going.
and that is a good question. Is, one of the hallmarks of this country is freedom of speech. And but when I talk about guardrails, it has more to do with deep fakes. Somebody record. Obviously, we now know we can record Nick's voice and talk to his Amazon device and have it order all kinds of cool stuff and ship it to us to our house. But in in general, I don't want it to define those broad philosophical things. I want it to guardrail the hard danger of what's
Yeah,
happening.
of course.
So the deep fakes, the the guy that, I think we talked about this several episodes ago, the guy that essentially got locked out of his smart home by Amazon because a driver heard a word that he didn't like coming out of his Ring camera. Um, you know, those are all things that, you know, is there going to be a point where I get into my car and my car won't start because it just decides, it said, you read something last night on the internet and it got downloaded, and we've decided that you don't get to drive today. You don't get to use your money today.
Well, your homework is to go watch Minority Report, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
We're
Well, I mean, again, all these movies that were written by great sci-fi masters, the original material, I didn't think that they were, a prediction. I mean, do you think Orwell would think that 1985 was like just 30 years, 40 years too early? I mean, it's really, it's frightening. And what's really frightening is that people are letting it happen without raising much of a fuss. Um, I think that
yeah,
I think there's, so we can, I like to quote, um, I can't think of the comic. He passed away a few years ago.
George Carlin.
George Carlin.
Nice.
Think of how stupid the average American is, and then realize that half of them are stupider or dumber.
Nick, did
Um,
you just pull a GitHub Copilot on Lee, knowing what he was going to say? You aren't the real Nick.
That
are you really, Nick?
AI Nick.
Yeah, but it's really, I mean, I think this stuff we kind of understand. I mean, even we don't understand it at a deep level. I mean, we don't have PhDs in deep and machine learning and mathematics and all that stuff. I understand it at a level where I can write some code and have it work. But think about how your parents look at it, if your parents are still alive, or your older relatives. It's magic to them, and they don't
They
question
they they don't grasp it. I shared something with my in-laws just in the last few days, and said, "Oh, here, sent this over to give you guys a laugh." I worked on it with a little help from Chat GPT,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing! You're incredible!" And they kept like showering me, and I was like, It's really like it's about this much, this much me, and this much technology." And they, they're I don't think they really understood, because until you play with it and see
Yeah.
for yourself, it's hard to it's hard to grasp
Yeah.
even the magic of it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, even we're, I mean, during our sales kickoff where you produced the pool shark
yeah,
image.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that you did it in, like, somebody mentioned something about somebody said they were afraid of sharks.
yeah, and
I
then
think I commented, get a lot of sharks in Des Moines or like that.
yeah,
And, and then, you came up with this pool shark image, and I had not done anything with imaging in it. So I brought up Copilot, and then I produced the Godzilla eating the shark from Jaws image.
yeah.
And I mean, the fact that that comes up in under 30 seconds, it's amazing.
Well, and what's been fun is, as I'm doing my own PowerPoint slides for different things, whether it's a customer presentation or a workshop or what have you. I could spend a lot of time perusing, stock photography, accounts that we have access to,
Mhm.
and things like that, or Google image search, or where's a funny meme for this or that. Or I can sit there and generate it, and it's a whole rabbit hole of its own, because image generation is I think way behind the text generation, right? So you can, as you mentioned, right, you did the ASCII cowboy, I think we talked about
Yep.
last
Yep.
time.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That, the image, the Dolly and the Mid Journeys and stuff like that. It's so important to be very specific in your prompting,
Mhm.
but it's fun also to see how it kind of comes up with things, and how it interprets what we ask. And so sometimes when I'm developing slides and I need an image for something, I'll put in what I think is a very obvious prompt, and it
Mhm.
comes back with something. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like,
Yeah.
okay, no, start over. And it's as much a exercise of me being thoughtful about how do I describe what I'm really looking for. And sometimes it just comes out like right out of the chute and it's amazing. Other times I might, go down the rabbit hole for 15 or 30 minutes, and it gets there. The interesting thing are the hallucinations. It is awful at generating text in image format.
Mhm.
It's almost always misspelled. And so anytime I generate images, I've gotten very used to saying include no text in this image, because it always comes out goofy looking, and
Yeah.
it's not usable. But going, not to take us back into the bias or the guardrails conversation, but just a quick callback to that. I was trying to generate an image, and I think I had typed in something along the lines of, show a person that's super overwhelmed and drinking from a fire hose, right? We've all heard that and used
Yeah.
that analogy. And it was like, I'm sorry, I cannot produce this, something about this is inappropriate, or not a good, in its interpretation, right? Whatever
Yeah.
bias or guardrails were in there, I don't know if it thought I was trying to generate something that looked like a deadly, weapon, or so. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a
It's
very simple request, and there was nothing inferred by what I was trying to generate, but it would not create an image of what I was going for. I was like, okay, well, let me pivot on that and try something else. But
and this is the thing that gives me hope, is that even in something that it doesn't understand whimsical,
yeah, Yeah, I
which
agree.
which if you think of Data on Star Trek, he didn't understand the concept of humor.
Right.
Humor is a very human thing, and how do you? Sure, you can write words that are funny, but if you want to create a humorous image, I actually had the same thing. I'm not going to describe because it would involve talking about somebody, but I described an image because a friend of mine he, he has moved to Vietnam to teach English. So I tried to generate an image of him being essentially a POW, and it said no, I cannot do that.
Mm.
Interesting.
And and I understand why, but I mean I can't say, look, this is for this is for a
Yeah.
friend. I'm pulling his leg because I told him he's going to end up in a rice paddy, you know, picking rice. But it wouldn't, it just wouldn't do it. So
So there are some guardrails,
yeah,
obviously. At what point does AI start to get to decide what the guardrails are?
well, it may
That's
already be there.
like, yeah, yeah.
Uh, how much? How much of the AI we experience was actually created by a previous AI?
So
That's almost a philosophical question.
Yeah, and at what point? So, did we talk about the Turing test last time?
Bring it up again. I'm
So
not
Alan
sure.
Turing came up with Alan Turing, who essentially invented the computer during World War II, and he had a test. He said that if a computer can pass the Turing test, it could be indistinguishable from a human. Well, now there's the anti-Turing test, which is, am I talking to an AI or am I talking to a human? So that is frightening in many ways.
yeah, I think chatbots have been, they've been using those as a vehicle to test a lot of AI and text generation for a while, and for a long time it was like, clearly I'm not talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting a lot more difficult to tell if you're genuinely talking to a person or code. Um,
I
and that's,
called I
I
called
find,
oh,
go ahead,
I
sorry.
called HBO Max or Max support a few months ago because it wasn't working, and I'm pretty sure that I was talking to an AI verbally
Hmm.
because I would say what my issue is, and then I would hear click 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 click, and then an answer, and then I would say something else, and I would hear click 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 click, and then an answer, and I said, "Am I talking to a human or to an AI?" And I hear click 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 click, a human. And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And you used to be able to fool those, robocalls by saying, "What's two plus two?" And then it couldn't. It would continue on with its spiel. Now, I mean, if you say that, it'll probably come back and say four, and then keyboard sounds.
Hmm.
It's I was unhappy about that. But who do you call to complain? I was calling the number to complain.
Well, I always like to have a positive for what we talk about. I had a teacher in high school who hated The Simpsons, and she would make no, bones about it. But she said every Simpson episode had a moral to it. There was always a moral that was above ground. So what's our positive moral that we can take away from this?
For me, it's familiarize yourself with, like, learn about it, jump in and play with it, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't think you're going to use it for work, or like, learn about it. It's a tool, and it can do a lot of things, and if you're going to understand the risks of it and you're going to understand the benefits of it, you you can read about it, but as you know, whoever said it, it's kind of magic, right? And you got to play with it to understand what that magic means and where it can help you and where it could potentially hurt you. Um, so I say play with it, right? Instead of just listening to us talk. I mean, you should always listen to us talk about it, but
Mhm.
go out and play with it, right? Fire it up and see what it does for yourself and get a hands-on understanding of it because I think that's really important. It's not going away.
It's
Sure.
just, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the answer to what's the solution to the majority of ills in the world? Education.
Yeah,
Read about it, use it, try it out, understand it, ask questions, expect better of your leaders, and you know come to your own conclusions. Don't be fed by us or anybody else. Go figure it out for yourself.
Sure.
I'm more than happy to have somebody reply to your, when you post this that, hey, that Lee Grant guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I'm happy to engage. I mean, let's talk about it. Not going to hurt my feelings. You can call me an idiot all you want.
to your point, and I've been, I'm a geeky kind of person. I enjoy this kind of stuff. It fascinates me, and so I am playing with it. But I'm also kind of the Johnny Appleseed evangelizing it to everybody I talk to, friends, family, whatever. Like, oh, have you seen this? It's kind of cool. It's also kind of scary. But I've started doing, and I've done this only a handful of times so far. But as I've been sharing it in text threads with friends or whoever, have you tried it? Have you seen it? Oh, no, not really. I've just read about it. I'm like, let's get on a video call real quick. I'm going to show you this live.
Sure.
And I've started doing these quick little demos of here's what you can do with it. Go play, right? But here's a smattering of where it can help you and just, where it's just goofy and funny and fun. But yeah, trying to help people get out there and play with it and develop their own opinions and ideas about it.
And I think I've said it before. It's just another tool. And you say 40%. I don't know if it gets you that far, but it's like any other tool in my tool belt, man. I got to use it, and if that's the only tool I'm using, that's a problem. Because I've pounded it in a nail with the end of a screwdriver before, in a pinch. So, but it doesn't work very well, and you destroy the screwdriver too. So, yeah, use the right tool and play around with them until you can figure out a mix that works for you. But good. Well, does anybody have any other parting words? Or
Oh,
we brought Lee from happy back down to Lee, so I know he's him.
oh no,
So
no. I mean,
happy.
I decided on the education thing, but you were going to say what's a positive? Copilot will write your DAX code for you.
Yeah.
We're our long national nightmare is over.
There
At least
you
my
go.
nightmare is over.
But well, it's always good to see you smile, and
Yeah,
now we know you're back at it. So
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Well, guys, thanks again. I appreciate the time. We'll jump back in down the road and let's see what new exciting things are happening.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Chris.